Hey, what's up everybody? It's Mike from Cornfield Customs, and today we're going to work on doing the wire edge on the Mack truck fender. So what I've got here is I have our buck, which we've seen in other videos, and I'm still going to do a video on making the other side of this buck for the other fender. But what I did to get a nice even line for where our wire edge is, I took some 3/16 inch round bar and laid it up and took an average of the notches I had in our stations when I made the buck profile. I got that nice even radius, and then I took some washers and tack welded the washers to the round bar so I could attach it to the wood buck. So I did that on both sides, and that will give us our nice even radius for the wheel opening. And you can see the reason I do it that way is because this one is where some damage was on the fender, so there's a gap there, but we know that the wheel opening should be nice and consistent and won't dip up there. So this should be a nice even arc, and I checked this round bar up against our fender before I attached it to the buck, and I used adjustable radius gauges just to make sure that everything matched, and I think it's pretty close. So I'm happy with the way that looks, but the next thing I need to do is I'm gonna take our fender and I'm gonna put it back on the buck, and then I can come in from the inside and I can mark that line where our wire edge needs to be. From there, I'll do some real simple math, calculate how much sheet metal I need to wrap over that wired edge, lay that out, we'll do our final trim, and then we can start wire edging it. So the issue with this is usually I'll start the wire edge process in the Linux or a bead roller if that's all you've got. But the problem is, with this fender being so big, I cannot physically manhandle that into the Linux to get it to do what I need it to do. So on this one, due to its size, we're going to have to do all of it by hand. We're gonna have to tip the edge, get it brought up, put the wire in, and close it, everything completely by hand with basic hand tools. So I think you guys are gonna like that because I get a lot of requests for people wanting to see how to do stuff with basic hand tools, just in case they don't have all the power equipment that's behind me. So this video is going to be just that. Sometimes, even with all the tools, you're gonna have to revert back to basic hand tool work to get the job done due to the complexity of the part, the size, a tool's broken, or you just don't have the tool. So this is why it's so important to be well versed in how to do it by hand as well as with the machinery if you have it. So let me get the camera set up in a tripod. We will get the fender thrown on the buck, get all that marked out, and then I'll show you how I offset the edge, the math to figure out what our offset edge needs to be, and we'll get to wire edging. All right, so what I did with the fender on the buck is I took a scribe and I came in and I marked the inside of where I want our wire edge using that scribe to scribe the back side of the metal. Since it's really tough to get in there with a marker, I went ahead and used a scribe. So then I took the fender off and it's laid here on the table. I just laid a moving blanket down just to not scratch the fender up while laying on the metal table. So then I came in and I put a couple reference dots that you could see me do with a blue Sharpie, just little reference dots to make the scribed line a little bit easier to see. And then I took 3/4 inch masking tape and I went around our mark. And any funky wavy spots, I just went ahead and cleaned up. That's why I like to use the tape. It shows all the imperfections. It might be kind of hard to see here, and you might get some funky optics with this pattern and the moving blanket. So, but I cleaned everything up, got a nice even radius across it, and I'll do this part next, the underside, but I wanted to get this side laid out. So then what we have to do is we have to calculate how much material we're going to need for the wire edge. So to calculate how much material we need to wrap around the wire for the wire edge, I'm just going to draw a quick diagram here. So we've got our main flat low crown area, and then it comes around and it wraps around a piece of wire. So we'll just say that the solid blue is our wire, and then here's the sheet metal coming around it. So we need to remember that the wire, or the sheet metal, is not going to wrap around the wire 100%, because the thickness of the material is going to give us a little bit of a little less than we need. So I always like to say 10 to 15% less than 360 degrees. So to get the 360 degrees, what we're going to do is the material we're using is 3/16 or 0.188 steel wire. So we'll grab our calculator here just to make life easier. So we're going to take 0.188, multiply that times 3.14, which is pi, and that gives us our circumference of the 3/16 wire. So that is 0.590, and we're not going to do the 3.2 at the end because we're not getting that carried away. So then what we'll do is we'll multiply it times 15%, just see where we're at. So that is 0.088. So then we'll take 0.590 minus 0.088. And that gives us right at 502 thousandths. So we're at a ½ inch. I'm not going to sweat those 2 thousandths. So we need to be able to offset our edge a ½ inch to get enough material to wrap around that wire. So that's super easy to do to lay out that edge. We're going to use some ½ inch fine line tape, and we're just going to butt that tape up against the 3/4 inch tape that I used to clean up our mark, and that'll give us the material we need to wrap the circumference of the 3/16 wire. So just like I just mentioned, we're going to take this ½ inch 3M fine line tape, and we're going to butt it right up against this 3/4 tape. This edge of the 3/4 inch tape is what I marked on the edge of our buck, where the wire needs to sit flush, and then we need to add that ½ inch using the tape to get that circumference to wrap around the wire. So that's next up. We're going to use that tape, lay it out, and then that will give us our final trim edge. So I'm going to go ahead and get to laying this out with the tape. Once everything was laid out, trimmed, and filed, I filed all the edges because we're going to use the edge as our guide. But usually I would use the Linux or a Pullmax to turn this edge, but like I said, this panel is way too big to be handling in a machine, especially by myself. So what I have to do is I'm turning this edge completely by hand. And what I do so I get that nice crisp edge is I just made a little tipping tool. So this is just out of 1" by 1" steel bar stock, and I made a notch a 1/2 inch deep because that's the offset we need, and it's labeled 1/2 inch. So then we just slide this in till it bottoms out, and then we put a little downward pressure on it and we bend it slow. So this is a really time-consuming process to do it by hand, but this is the best way to make sure you're going to get that even tip all the way across the panel flange. So if you're doing this at home, just take your time, don't get in a rush, just angle it down, work back and forth. And again, this is a really time-consuming process, but it's kind of what you have to do. If you just use a hammer and dolly, you're not going to get that crisp line like you are folding over this hardened, this hard edge right here. So that's why it's so critical that you use something to turn that flange crisp instead of using a hammer and a dolly. I'm not saying you can't use a hammer and dolly, but it's just a lot of work, and I've found that the edge gets a little sloppy when trying to do that. Make yourself up a little tool. If you don't have the capability of making a tool, or you're in a hurry on something small, you can always use an adjustable wrench. The amount it's going to fold is going to be a lot narrower, and that might work really good here in this tighter radius where that tool doesn't want to fit. So I might end up marking this on the outside and using an adjustable wrench just to show you how to do that. But you have to have a tool to fold that edge. So I'm going to get back to it because, like I said, this is gonna take me a little while. I'll film some of it. We might speed some of it up. We might cut some of it out. Not 100% sure how it's going to land in the actual video. Just got lots of stuff to do with turning this edge a little bit at a time. So stick around as I get this edge turned and we continue it on over into the wired edge. So now with the majority of the flange done with the large tool, the problem we run into is coming around this corner, our tool is a little too wide. Instead of making a new tool, this is like I said earlier in the video, and I just did some of the edge turning with an adjustable wrench. And you just adjust it down to the metal thickness, and you come in, and I've got our 1/2 inch offset line here. And same thing we were doing with the tipping tool. We're just going to bring that flange down just a little bit at a time. And we're going to work all the way down, back and forth, try not to get too carried away. But as we make this radius, we're going to have too much material, so we're going to have to shrink that a little bit. And what I have to do that is, this is a hand shrinker stretcher. You just squeeze it. It's made out of like an industrial riveter. So we will come in and put that on our edge and just squeeze it a little bit. It doesn't need a lot because as it rolls over, it's going to need to essentially shrink and then stretch back out as it comes around. So we don't want to get super carried away and change the shape or the form out here. We just want to adjust this so we don't have a bunch of material just laying loose. Just want to tighten it up a little bit. And then what I'll do is we're going to be about halfway. So the 3/16 cold rolled bar that I get comes in 12-foot sticks. So I can't do the whole fender in one shot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna seam it about in the middle here. So what I'll do is I'll leave it a little bit long. We'll go ahead and wire edge this side, and then we'll do the other side. So we're gonna do it in halves. But before we get to that point, now that this is almost at a 90, we're gonna have to turn that 90 into a J. And that J shape will allow the wire to sit in here, and then we can close the wire in on top of it. So to do that, we're going to use this dolly that's kind of shaped like that, and we'll hook that on the back side of our flange, and we'll continue to roll our wire edge material into a J. So once I get this tidied up a little bit better, I'm gonna flip it over and we're gonna work on this half, getting it turned into a J, and then we can start actually throwing some wire into the wire edge area. All right, so I'd went ahead and done this edge, and now I'm gonna kind of walk you through the steps on how I did it. So now that this is turned into a J channel, I've went ahead and put some primer on the inside of that channel and on the wire that will become the wire edge. So next up, I'm going to clamp that wire in all the way forward inside that J channel, and I'll put the clamp about every 6 inches or so, just loosely holding it in there. And then I will take the hammer and dolly and start to knock the wire edge around. So we'll get that in. You'll see me grab some pliers, and I'm just squeezing it in a couple spots to lock that wire in so I can continue working around. This is a pretty slow process. You want to take your time, not get too carried away. If you rush through this process and try to wrap it too fast, you're going to get tooling marks and stuff that's going to be hard to get out. So once we get that all hammered over and tight, then I'm going to have to come back with a pair of pliers that I call a squeezer, and it's made with the wire edge shape in, and you go around and you squeeze it, and it just wraps that wire edge, that last little bit, over center. So it's not a P shape, it's actually wired all the way onto the backside. So that's about where I'm at. I will go ahead and get the wire clamped in here, and I'm going to leave it long because like I trimmed the top half and then on both sides, so the wire is in here, but I haven't closed this yet. Once I get the wire kind of overlapped, I will trim it and I'll come back and I'll fuse both halves of the wire. Again, that's because the wire isn't long enough to do all the way around in one shot, so I'm doing it in halves, and that makes it a little bit easier to give my hands a little bit of time to recover between using the squeezer. So let's go ahead and get the wire clamped in here, start hammering it over, and you guys will see the process. So here's the wire. Just gonna put a little bit of a bow into that and get it snapped into the J channel, and we're gonna take our vice grips and use that to squeeze that into the J channel here. I like to use these needle nose ones in the area I'm gonna work. Just gives me a little bit more room to work. So just getting everything snapped in. I'm not too worried about the radius just yet. I'll deal with that later. I want to get this thing locked in the main wheel well opening. So I'm gonna grab a couple more clamps and we'll draw that wire all the way up into the J channel. All right, so I'm gonna work in this area first, and I've got our dolly and our hammer. I'm gonna put the dolly on the bottom side, not flat up against the outside of the skin, but flat up against the bottom of the wire. And then I'm gonna hammer kind of this direction, however I can get in there to get that to help fold that around. And I'll bring it over the center, and then I'll grab the squeezers, which are here. Just got a little flat to not gouge the backside. And then here is the half circle that'll grab the wire and squeeze it around. So that's what I'm gonna do, and then I'll start to move around. So I'm just gonna get busy. I'm not gonna talk about it a whole lot. You'll kind of see what starts to happen, and I will move the clamps as I work around the panel and get everything snugged up. So on this side, I just took the wire edge and bent it around my fingers and hands to get the curve in it once I had it more locked up here. And I still have to come back. You can see that's not rolled over. I've just got it kind of attached real tight in a few spots around, so I need to finish that. But coming up here, I just kind of bent the wire into place and then I trimmed it, and you can see right there, that little gap. I'm gonna bring up the TIG welder and I'm gonna weld that, just weld the two wires together to connect them on the back side. So then on this side, it's kind of the same. The wire is held in tight here. I haven't finished wrapping it here, and you can see it's just loose. You know, it's not attached to anything. So what I'll do is, as I come around, I'll take our vice grips and I'll clamp it into place and get it to where it's close, and then I'll come in and I'll peel that, pull this out a little bit, trim it, and then I can clamp it into place and weld it too. So that's about where we are. Everything is mostly wired. It just needs some finishing, everything tightened up. And yeah, a lot of that's going to be with the squeezer that I showed you, going around, squeezing all the way around, just tightening everything up. And then I'm going to dress it with a DA just to get any tooling marks or scratches off of it. And then this fender will be all wire edged. And all I have to do is I'm going to come back and hammer and dolly on the edge a little bit, work out any bumps or dings that's left. Just finish it out, run over it with a DA, get everything nice and textured. And then this thing will be ready to box up and ship out to the client and see how it fits on the truck. All right, so that wraps up the Mack truck fender build. I really hope you guys enjoyed seeing how I did the wire edge work with basic hand tools. I know I've said I don't do a ton of hand tool work in the shop in general because I've got all the power equipment, but there are still times that you can't use power equipment on certain projects, and that's why it's so critical to understand how to do it by hand. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how to wire edge, what the wire edge consists of, putting it together, and just on this project in general. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video, as well as many of the other videos we have on this channel. Drop down in the comment section, let me know what you think about this video. Check out some of our others if you're new to the channel, and I do greatly appreciate all the feedback and all the views, and we will catch you guys on the next one.